We are live with another episode on Political Polarization Explained, and we'll be right back in a second with author and activist Jason Fry, author of the book National Divorce, A Plan for Peace. See you in a moment. Okay, and we just got that in. Looking forward to using it. We're live right now with Jason Fry. He is the author of National Divorce, A Plan for Peace, activist and author. This is a copy of the book here, National Divorce, just recently came out. I was interviewed in it. We'll get to it, but that's not really the main point. National Divorce, Plan for Peace. America's in crisis, and the differences between people, states, and parties are irreconcilable. Many doubt whether the state's relationship with the federal government is a beneficial one. The looming question is not if the United States will break up, but when. The book makes the case. This book makes the case that a negotiated split represents the most likely chance for a peaceful outcome by committing to legislative processes, nonviolence, and a good dose of live and let live. Cities, states, and individuals can regroup in ways that better suit their preferences. National Divorce is the peaceful alternative. The book has been recommended by F.H. Buckley, who wrote the famous book on secession. I was also interviewed in that book. Robert P. Murphy, author of Common Sense. Daniel Miller, of course, our friend and colleague. Kyle Biederman from the Texas State Legislature, who also helped push something with independence or secession for Texas. He was also featured in the national news for that. And this is a little bit about Jason. Jason is a fifth-generation Texan, believes in Texas independence. He's authored hundreds of articles, ranging from Texans' love of tacos, awesome, and wild pigs, to academic constitutional arguments and detailed position papers debunking mainstream media misinformation. He's a genuine and sincere pacifist secessionist who desires the best for those around him while also respecting others' rights to their own beliefs. He's also a knife maker, an author, and a Christian conservative, but he's definitely not an extremist. Jason, how well did we do there? Did I get anything wrong? Is there something we need to correct with the record?
That was all stuff that I wrote, so I think I should stand by it.
Perfect. Then we'll move on quickly. So the book, National Divorce, F.H. Buckley is a big author. He wrote the book, American Secession. He's possibly one of the top scholars in this range. And I can see that, you lived in Texas and you thought this was a good idea. But I got to ask you about this. So was this your idea, or did you get this idea from Marjorie Taylor Greene when she famously started the national conversation?
What was the date on that? That was 18 months ago, right? 2 years ago?
Let me get let's see here.
It's been a while.
That was February. Damn, it's out of the caption.
It's been a while. I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
It's been a year, 2 years at least.
This was her famous tweet where she said, "We need a national divorce. We can't live together anymore." And then this is the actual tweet that they were referencing. Sorry for cutting out the clip, but if you type this,
no worries. So those of us who have been ahead of her in this game, right, who have been working towards some kind of peaceful separation for a long time.
Yeah. So
okay, that's a slogan, not a plan, right?
Okay, so she didn't have a plan, but maybe she put the idea out there. You followed up with a plan. Okay, so why? We'll do this in two questions. So the first one's going to be, if you could answer as both the author of this book and a person who spent time researching this subject more at an academic level, and as an American, like I say, sitting in the stew pot with the rest of us. So both abstract 30,000 foot view and I'm on the ground on the front lines. Why did you write this book, and why did it need to be written now, in your opinion? What are you seeing in America that makes you feel this is an appropriate topic at this time?
So, like you pointed out, Greene started a discussion about this idea of national divorce. Tom Woods also has put out was quick right after that to put out a book that was a collection of podcasts. But for
real quick,
me, yeah,
can you have a microphone? Can you hold it closer to your mouth
I'm using this.
on your headset? Yeah, right there. Okay, never mind. It's coming in and out. It's fine. We'll deal with it. Please continue. I'm sorry about that. Hold on. The audio is cutting out now. Damn. Can you say something again? I just had you for a second. Nope, it's cutting out. Maybe you jiggle the cord. This is weird. So the audio is working. Maybe unplug it and plug it back in. Sorry about this technical difficulties. We did have audio, and we're working to get it back. No, I still can't hear you. Maybe unplug the headphones. Oh, okay. We'll do this the hard way. Unplug headphones. And just talking to the computer.
Yeah, so are we
There
good?
you go.
Okay.
Now we're back. Okay, so
So all
why
right.
did you write this book? Why was the topic of national divorce important? Why is this topic relevant, and why now?
Right. So when Green started the mess, what caused me to write the book? So are you familiar with the story of Shelby Park?
No.
So in February, down at Eagle Pass, Texas, there was a park, Shelby Park, where the feds were air quotes controlling the border by letting everybody through. The state of Texas figured out that park did not have to be under federal jurisdiction, right? It wasn't federal land, and so they locked the gate, prevented the feds from getting to the park, prevented the feds from getting to the boat ramp where they could put their boats on the river. So, of course, Joe Biden and his people didn't really like that. So you ended up with Texans lined up on one side of the fence and feds lined up on the other side of the fence. And I'm convinced that nobody went down there to cause trouble. You know, it was all just people doing their jobs. But it crossed my mind that we were one bad guy in the bushes from things going really crazy, right?
Good point.
And that's what got me started writing. Not that this momentum towards separation has been building a long time already, but the idea that maybe we would find ourselves in a situation of violence unintentionally by accident, just because things escalate because some guy was scared, made me want to get out ahead of it. Made me want to get out and say, yeah, but there has to be a better way. And that's what started me on the book. Unlike some of the other secession books, I take the approach that America is divided already, right? Folks already don't get along. Folks already don't trust each other. Folks already don't trust the government. The government already sucks at its day job, right? All those things that to me are super obvious reasons to separate are not going away. And so if there's no hope of fixing any of that, it makes me feel like the secession or the breakup is inevitable. So if it's inevitable, then we have an opportunity to influence how it goes. And that's what I wrote about.
Okay, so let me play devil's advocate. For everybody watching right now, here's the article in Eagle Pass, a tense border standoff between Texas and the federal government. He was talking about Shelby Park. Texas took it over. Here's a picture for everybody to follow along. That's what it looks like right there. A lot of razor wire. The federal government in Texas had a dispute about that. And you saw that and felt that exemplifies the amount of tension between the states and the federal government and kind of shows a breakdown in the order of America that we had come to expect over the last 60 years, that this This is a sign of things not working out like they had in the 50s.
Correct, but more than that, it was an opportunity where things could have gone very poorly in spite of everyone's intentions, right? You know, if some people had opened up from the other side of the river, or some folks from the Texas side had, you know, again, there were so many ways that could have gone sideways.
You're talking about Fort Sumter Part 2.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Somebody who's
nobody has any interest in that, but
right.
I feel like when you get guys lining up, there's more potential than before they lined up, right? So that was what got me going. And you know, those of us who support independence have long said national divorce is a slogan, not a plan, right? We have a plan. You have a plan. You're going to put a referendum on through the California referendum process. We have a plan. We're going to put a bill through the legislature. New Hampshire has a plan. They're going to put a bill through the legislature, right? And so one reason to write this book was to connect the plan that's been going on for years with the rhetoric of national divorce. That's a slogan, right? And, you know, I'm not a super prophetic. However, I predict that 47% of America is going to be kind of grumpy by mid-November.
What?
Right?
What are you talking about?
Just a guess.
This country handles elections with incredible maturity. In no way have we seen a period where states immediately declare they want to secede based upon who was elected, going back with Obama in 2008 or the better part of a decade. What are you talking about? That says stability when people want to secede immediately after someone's elected, and it goes election cycle after election cycle, repeated when that never happened before in the last century.
Right. So since, of course you are. And so since we have seen that rhetoric, even in the smoother elections, right? So the first Obama election got a little bit of drama. The second one actually was kind of smooth, right? If I recall. The first Trump election was sort of smooth, like it was kind of chaos, but it wasn't disputed really. 2020 was a freaking circus, and 2024 is next month. So again, just guessing. It seems likely that there is going to be some disagreement there, and even if there's not disagreement about the process, there's going to be unhappiness with the outcome from a lot of people. Almost half of everybody is going to be upset regardless of how the election goes. So that is another reason for why now. So I wanted to get this book out in time to say, man, that's awesome that we don't agree. Why don't you go be your way over there and I'll go be my way over here, and we'll all be getting it our way, right? So that's another reason why now.
I'm going to show you this picture. I'd like to get your commentary. Give me one second here to put this in. We talked about how Donald Trump didn't concede the election. There's some truth there. What I find interesting, though, is that he's not the only person to have done this. And I think this backs up what you're saying. Let me just pop this in here. Turns out other people besides Trump have said, let's doubt elections and not concede them, such as this person I'm going to show you here. Well, look at that. Who's that?
Right.
That's Hillary Clinton. And she said Trump is a horrible man for not conceding the election.
And or Biden should not concede.
To Biden. But she told Biden, don't concede the election, quote, under any circumstances. Now, this was before the election, Biden.
Yeah, of course.
When they thought Biden might lose, but when she was saying, oh, he might lose, well, don't concede. And so she both complained that Trump wouldn't concede and the Democrats did, and then she did it herself, and none of the Democrats.
Well, both sides are terrible about good for me, but not for thee, right? Both sides are ridiculous about that kind of two-faced whatever. They want it their way, but they don't want anybody else to have it their way, right? I mean, that's that's American politics right now. And so I don't feel like that is fixable. I don't think there's a national marriage counselor that will take our national relationship and hook us up with some
Okay,
good
yes.
counseling. That doesn't exist, and so we seem headed for some kind of a split. And if we're going to split, then let's split on purpose. Let's split intentionally. Let's split with a negotiation, right? It only has to be a war if somebody starts shooting. So let's not. Right?
Yeah. There was, there was a famous, I think it was a Utah governor who said in response to Marjorie Taylor Greene's "We need a national divorce," that we need national marriage counseling. I'm trying to find the article now.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It tracks with the metaphor. Um, if this were a marriage, then we would be in trouble, and then some sort of an assistant, some help to mediate and moderate would be useful. Bob Murphy from the Mises Institute makes the point, and I put it in the book, that there is actually no national marriage, right? Did you, Marcus, stand up before God and humanity and say, I pledge allegiance to this one forever till death do us part, right?
No,
There's
I
no
don't
such
recall
thing.
doing that.
Yeah, like we were born here. We've been the beneficiary of it, but we didn't consent to this government, really. We didn't marry this government for sure. There was
Right.
no
If you go that
there's
way, yeah.
right. And so when I say national divorce, um, I don't like divorce. Divorce is terrible. But in this case, it's a good metaphor because we're not married anyway. So all the terrible things about divorce have to do with unfaithfulness and breaking up a vow. That's not in play here. So when I say national divorce, I'm talking about a negotiated split between parties who have decided they don't get along.
It was a Utah governor who said we need a national marriage counseling.
Did he propose who would do that?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because I had asked about 30 different professors who are experts in political science
Mm-hmm.
about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they all agreed she was a horrible, horrible spokesperson for this concept.
Right.
But 2/3 of them agreed that she was not lying. So they
Right.
weren't going to just say anything publicly to back her. But I go, okay, objectively, is what she's saying completely untrue and you've never seen anything like that? And they go, no, she's
No.
talking about there's something there. At least 2/3 of them said that,
Yeah.
but they didn't want to be seen supporting her.
I would put myself in the same boat. Yeah, I don't stand for most of the things she stands for, but she put that concept, that metaphor out there in the public, and it's a valid one. So part of my book is to dive in and speak about it, intelligently, not just on X with a post, right? But to tie it to the existing plans of the freedom movements and secession movements nationwide.
So I had asked 30 of those people, and they didn't like Marjorie, all of them, and then some of them agreed that she had a point. And I go, okay, so let's say national divorce is coming. The Utah governor said marriage counseling. That got a lot of coverage. What I found interesting was that the media covered this Utah governor saying that. No one explained what he meant.
Right.
And they never went back for a follow-up interview. It was just like it was a soundbite, and then they went out there. There was 30 different newspapers talking about how he said this. No follow-up on what does a national marriage counseling look like. I asked 30 professors, and I got this many answers. So who does marriage counseling for us?
It's impossible because in a marriage you have two, unless you're maybe in Utah and you have three. I don't know how this works, right? But you got a couple of people, right? A couple of parties, and it's just two people. In this case, you've got a federal government, which is untold millions of bureaucrats, right? Plus all this history and a few different spokespeople that don't agree with each other, right? Are we negotiating with Congress? Well, which member? There's 538 of them. Are we negotiating with the president? Well, which cycle? Because last time the president was a totally different guy, right? So there's this huge federal government, and the disagreement is with a huge portion of the population. So if you could find a spokesperson from the national side, from the federal side, who would they be negotiating with? Me and you and my cousins, and I mean, it can't go that far. In my mind, it will end up being negotiations between some federal representative and some representatives of states. There is no way in my mind for Republicans to secede, and there's no way for Democrats to secede, right? Those political parties are not connected to the formal structures of government. I would argue maybe they should be abolished. But that's a whole another issue. But the party apparatus or the camps are not connected to the state government, right? Or the county government,
Sure.
or your mayor,
Sure.
So it'll have to be the states themselves that go through this exit process. It has to be some existing political structure to use a politically structured process. Make sense?
Well, one of the things I asked him was that Joe Biden said in 2020 that when he gets elected, there will be a national calming. And he said that. He said, I'll get elected. What's going to happen? Oh, there'll be a national calming once I get elected, and people will realize that Trump was wrong and they'll break away from him and America will come back together. However, that seems like that didn't work out. So my question is, if he can't do it, who's going to do it?
So to me, the reason that it didn't work out is because he kept doing the same dysfunctional stuff, right? So Biden continued the ridiculous, exceptional, overreaching COVID response in society. He continued the printing of money and fiscal stimulus related to COVID response. He pushed every button in the wrong direction to create inflation. I don't think he did it maliciously. I think they're just ignorant. He did not deregulate. He did not shrink the size of the federal government. He did not address any of the issues that the grumpy people were grumpy about, right? He continued doing exactly what the federal government does. And so there was no calming because nothing changed. The color of the jersey of the team leader changed, but the team is still on the freaking Titanic going down, right? It doesn't matter who's driving the bus if the bus is driving into a cliff, off a cliff, right?
Well said.
So that's my take, is that, everyone who says we can't doesn't propose anything different, right? They don't propose anything different. So my answer to that is autonomy. Honestly,
that's what I come back to is that, I can't take a stance in the interviews because it has to be neutral for people to follow along. But
fair.
Joe Biden called. He said, I'm going to be the voice. I'll be the voice of decency. I'll return us to decency in America. I'll be a return to decency. There'll be a national calming down. Mm-hmm. And after he said all that, January 6th happened. And right. I turn to liberals and I go, does that sound like it worked? And now we're 4 years in. It's very clear it didn't work. So I'd ask professors, if Joe Biden running for president can't do it, who is the other politician that's in power today and can get both sides of the country to listen to them and come to some sort of agreement? That was before RFK ran, but even with RFK, he didn't get the left. Is there any politician out there who is alive and has any sort of power, who has a remote chance of bringing the left and right together, in your opinion?
I have not seen such a person.
Okay, that's the answer.
In my lifetime.
Yeah. And I have to say, most professors couldn't answer, or if they did, it was kind of like, a lot of the Midwest professors said, Amy Klobuchar. And I'm like,
what?
Yeah,
Nobody
but
from
she
Texas is going to vote
yeah,
for
she
her.
only got like a fourth of the country, and she fantastically lost the African American vote. So I don't know how they're going
Hmm.
to go and
Hmm.
listen to her. And her supporters didn't know that. I'm like, she got knocked out because of the African American vote. She
Interesting.
allowed some African American man to be improperly prosecuted or mistreated by the police, and she basically looked the other way. And then when that came out, that's what tanked her. So I'm like,
So now we're trying to elect the boss of the police in California. Is that an overstatement?
I don't want to get too sidetracked. I will just say
Okay, just saying, just
something
saying.
we say, something we minorities, non-Caucasian people in California say that you won't see on national television. You all don't know her like we know her. So
Hmm.
she is not popular with non-Caucasian people here in California
I
because
wouldn't
she
expect so.
routinely locked up African American and
Yep,
Latino young men.
that is my
And
understanding as well.
yeah, and she invented the policy of locking up their parents so we could have poor people now be imprisoned because their kid was bad. That was a new thing. And then
Okay.
she also pursued the marijuana prosecutions while at the same time having had smoked pot. And then when asked about it, she laughed about how she imprisoned people for marijuana while at the same time smoking it herself.
Right.
That was the response. That did not go over very well with minorities here. You're not going to
No,
see that in the
no surprise.
news.
No surprise.
You'll see all sorts of happy minorities backing her. I don't know who the hell those people are,
Mhm.
and they're certainly not talking to middle and lower income minorities across
Right.
California who have a
So,
very distinct memory of her.
so to circle
But
back to your graphic that you've got up there, I will give Joe Biden some credit. Donald Trump is a mouth and a keyboard and a tiny bit of policy, right? Kamala Harris is maybe a ton of policy, but won't do an interview because all her policies are bad. Joe at least didn't stir the pot. Calm and civility, maybe because he didn't have any ideas, but calm and civility, yeah, he was better at that than either of the current options in front of us. We, I am, I'm fairly neutral. Okay, I haven't voted for either. I haven't voted for a major candidate in a long time. Let's put it that way. Um, and so I like to pick on them both equally. I think both candidates that we have right now are terrible for totally different reasons, and they are both likely to continue the status quo of dysfunction. One will pull it one dysfunctional way, and one will pull it a new and exciting dysfunctional way. Um, that's my take.
so I have to ask you the devil's advocate question.
Sure.
So this is devil's advocate. You say, of course, hey, my book is called National Divorce: A Plan for Peace.
Mm-hmm.
Civil war's coming. I don't want violence. I don't want that to happen. And I'm saying, me, Jason Fry, that I view negotiated peaceful independence as an alternative
Mm-hmm.
to preventing a coming civil war. Okay.
Correct. That's fair.
Well, I got to point out the media says you are lying and that
lying.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is lying. They say that when you or anyone uses the term national divorce, what you actually mean is that you want to cause a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
So, sir, are you secretly trying to cause a civil war like MSNBC says, or
So clearly
MSNBC
not.
says,
In the
or
book in
the super
particular,
liberal National Republic says? Why are they saying that about you if that's not true?
because one of the best ways to win is to make your opponent look like a bad guy. Doesn't matter if they are or not, right? If they can tie national divorce rhetoric to 1861 and slavery, which is completely unrelated, by the way, then we become the bad guys for suggesting it. It is purely manipulation on the part of the status quo, right? They want to make those of us that want to be left alone sound like we are crazy extremists. That is not true. Another reason, I have a personal investment here. So I have two children in the military. And so if things go sideways, it is literally my kids that are going to have to go clean up the mess, right? I do not want my children fighting in a war. I don't want them fighting here. I don't want them fighting in Ukraine. I don't want them fighting in Israel. I don't want them fighting. I want my children to be safe and happy, just like everybody else that has kids. So that's one reason, again, that I've come out to advocate for peace, because I don't want to see bad things.
Well, let me ask you then, straight up, since you brought it, as a parent, if lawful orders were given by a duly elected president through the democratic process, and they said, we want to send your kids to go attack some other state and kill other Americans to keep the union together. I'm the duly elected president. Everyone acknowledges it. I'm giving that order. Are you cool with your kids being sent to go shoot and murder other Americans to keep the union together?
So I do not want to jeopardize my young men's careers by giving a firm answer to that question. So I will say it this way.
Okay.
I will say it is a historical fact that Robert Lee went to West Point. So every individual who receives that order will have to decide for themselves whether they are going to participate or not. And Robert Lee went to West Point. He was a piece of the establishment until he wasn't, right? That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
I don't want any shade.
That's fine. That's
coming
fine.
back on my kids and their security clearances and all that.
Yeah, but we are at the point now when you had progressed and I'm not going to push, but you had progressed the conversation. We are at the point now where, unfortunately, this is a relevant question.
Oh, absolutely,
In this conversation. So
yeah, and I don't want to cause my kids trouble, but I will say that they and I have had that conversation, and every single soldier will have to choose which side they're on. There have been terrible, immoral, bad orders come down the chain of command for as long as there has been a chain of command, right? And every soldier has to decide all the time whether they're going to follow orders or follow what they believe is right. I mean, there would be no war movies if that conflict didn't still exist, right?
All right, let's get into that. Give me 1 second to pull this up here.
Excuse me.
And you'll get the idea the moment I show you this picture. I want to ask you about the future. And I want to ask you about what the future holds. You were talking about Shelby Park. And that while it was largely uneventful, when you look at the whole thing in the grand picture, what had happened if somebody didn't behave well? Somebody lashed out.
Yeah, I don't know. But you mentioned earlier kind of Fort Sumner 2.0. Archduke Ferdinand. I mean, there are these tip-off events sometimes that occur in ways that have greater consequences beyond the initial consequence, right? So I don't know if anybody died at Fort Sumner or not, right?
Well, this is the question.
But it started a pretty big thing. So okay, sure.
How close are we? I don't know. Going back to the Shelby Park thing, one guy who's not really with anybody, nobody agrees to his thing, suddenly decides, I'm going to start attacking and killing federal troops, which is a horrible idea, and nobody should do it, and it's wrong and it's bad. Well, let's say one guy loses his mind and does that. You were saying that might have been enough to kick things off to a whole other level. Taking that thought, fast forwarding, we're on to the second assassination attempt of Trump. What would have happened if that first assassination attempt, the bullet had, I'm sorry, made contact
one inch
on TV?
Yeah.
What would happen to America? Would we have said, hey, let's come together, kumbaya, I understand there's tough feelings, but we can pull together? Or
so
something?
My understanding, this would not have been the first time a president was assassinated. We've lost a few over the years.
Sure.
All the way back to James Garfield and some more. In no case has that assassination kicked off an extra conflict, right? Lincoln was assassinated, but that conflict was long ongoing by that time. mostly over, honestly, by that time. So there's no historical precedent to say, oh, yeah, that totally means civil war, right? However, I would say that my friends on the right might be a little more likely to misbehave, considering that they, took an unguided, self-invited tour through the Capitol last time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But I would point out,
they have shown that they don't always follow the rules.
yeah,
And I say my friends in tongue in cheek; those are not my friends. It's not my people. But I think there's some potential that people would react what to me seems irrationally. But yeah, I think there's some potential.
fair enough. And I believe January 6th was, bad and a coup, and that's my opinion. Nobody has to agree. But I also believe that there's reason to believe that the first and second shooters on Trump were liberals. So let's go to the first guy, Thomas Crooks. He donated to Act Blue. He went under a false alias and went on conservative websites and got into arguments with conservatives. Now, when I look at the mainstream media, they're going, well, we can't tell if he's liberal or conservative. I've met 1,000 conservatives. I've been in politics a year. I have never in my life heard of a conservative going on conservative websites and getting into multiple arguments with conservatives and then finding out he himself was a conservative later. I have met thousands of liberals who have gotten into all sorts of online arguments with conservatives, and that only ramped them up and made them more excessive. So I'm seeing the media go, yeah, just because he got into arguments with these conservatives and just because he donated to Act Blue doesn't mean you can say he's a liberal. And I'm going, well, I don't have all the information the FBI has, but what you're saying doesn't match up with the 1,000 people I've met over the last 10 years doing politics. No, not one would do that. And they're going, well, he technically also registered Republican right before. And I go, yeah, to find out how to case the joint. But then we go to the second guy and go, oh, we don't know his motives. He went to Ukraine and fought in Ukraine. Trump has been saying he was going to shut down the Ukraine war and not cool with it for basically the last 4 years.
Yeah,
the
Biden
Dems have been saying the opposite. So how are we not clear?
Well, I mean,
what?
I'm not a fan of the media really, but they do have a vested interest in some kind of stability, right? I don't see it happening that the media is going to come out and tell the version of the truth that stirs things up. They're going to tell some watered down version of the truth or some perspective on the truth that keeps things tamped down. That's just what they do. They do it, they do it to me, they do it to you, they do it to every secession movement that tries to make any progress in the media. Doesn't matter how right we are or how wrong we are. They don't want to hear it. And so they do the same thing in these scenarios. I mean, their job, they view their job as guiding the discussion or cultivating or curating the truth by putting certain perspectives out there. I think that's not useful, but that's the way they are.
Who else?
So in this case, I'm not surprised at all that they would say absolutely nothing about a shooter when it suits their biases. But
I'm just seeing, like, I've seen the news go, we don't know. And I'm like, okay, so this is just a random thing that he just went on conservative sites and argued with conservatives, but we can't say that means that he's garbage. That is a garbage. And then the other guy, like, Trump has been against Ukraine for 4 years. The Dems have been hardcore for Ukraine for 4 years. This guy went to Ukraine, but we can't tell what his motives were. I don't buy that at all for a second.
And they do the same thing with other criminals, school shooters and other people.
I get the school shooting one because that is
the opinion of the guy who escalates to the point of violence.
Fair enough.
But maybe you don't put that on the newspaper. Right.
Fair enough. There's a group of people called the Communist Chinese Party.
Yeah, fair.
And they too believe that their news should only show things that keep the cohesion of the nation, and that they have the right to censor ideas so that it doesn't upset the delicate Chinese mind. Tell me, what is the difference between the Chinese Communist Party and the description you just gave of the media in America?
They own their crap.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they're
They-
basically the answer he
they-
said, folks, is there
they-
basically isn't much of a difference. All
They
right.
do the same thing. It's just the communists at least will tell you they're doing it.
Sure. There you go. So one is from Civil War. If it had gone well, and I saw liberals saying this and conservatives saying it, and you're right, they kind of tamped it down. Part of the problem, though, is that, that's what they do in China and
Mhm.
totalitarian governments. They won't let you know about these burgeoning, boiling up issues. And then what happens is you have a coup and revolution that overthrows the entire government.
Right.
Democracies have historically been more stable because
Correct.
they would let their people know the bad news as it developed, and that would force tough conversations and
Mhm.
force tough change. And therefore, you had more stable societies that don't
But
revolt.
it has
When
been a
we
long
deny
time since we
that,
have had
we
that.
yeah, we create. China has a gigantic security force because they're afraid of people revolting at any moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I see us pushing our country to the same thing when we follow the same methodology that they do.
Correct.
Let's not have a conversation. Let's not have an awkward discussion. Let's not get into those painful solutions. Let's ignore till it blows up in our face.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's
And
how
so-
revolutions and coups happen. That's like well known.
When they do that, when they do their thing and make the whole world stupid, right? I will be able to say, I told you it didn't have to be there.
Okay. I already asked you about Trump assassination, Shelby Park. Doesn't this mean civil war? Let's go back to Shelby Park.
Okay.
Are you familiar with a thing called, and we're winding down, but are you familiar with a thing called Bleeding Kansas?
I know the term. I know it was the Civil War, localized violence over slavery stuff, whether or not Kansas was going to be slavery free. That's about all I remember.
Yep.
You have to
Yep.
fill in the details. I don't know who was on
Yep.
which side or what. I don't know.
Yep, that's basically it. So when I talked to a lot of professors about the Civil War, they would go, the Civil War was super horrible and mega horrible, and hundreds of thousands of people shot in one thing, and then they would go, so Mark, I don't think we're going to get to that level of violence. That was extreme.
Mhm.
And I go, okay, professor, I understand. But the thing is that the people in 1860 also thought they would never get to that level of violence and were also caught off guard and also never thought they'd get there. And experts on both sides, that could never happen.
Right.
There was a thing called Bleeding Kansas. And now we know from our understanding of psychology and sociology that prepared them for this level of violence. So before the Civil War, for a decade,
Yep.
you had Northerners and Southerners living in Kansas. Some of them on slavery, some of them didn't. And they would literally walk out and gun each other down in the face in front of their family and kids going to the Sunday church.
Mhm.
And newspaper reports were going back to the North and back to the South going, look at this Northerner. He walked up to this mom and shot her in the face. And look at this Southerner. He walked up and shot these kids and the dog. And so for 10 years, everybody in the North and everybody in the South was hearing these stories about how fellow Americans were totally cool walking up and gunning you down in the face in front of your family. And there was no justice, and they were totally cool with it, and they kept doing it. So for 10 years, Northerners heard, actually, Southerners are quite fine murdering Northerners in the biggest way. And for 10 years, Southerners heard, actually, Northerners are quite fine murdering Southerners. So what happens, sir? There's one television broadcast on one night, just one broadcast on TV, 4D, 4HD, good lighting, good color, good audio, and it shows 300 conservatives and 300 liberals meet each other with knives, and they literally stab each other all to death. Does America say the next day, that's cool, we've had tough times, let's calm down? Or would the level of violence and American on American bloodlust possibly cause a second Bleeding Kansas event here in our modern era?
Let me start with my personal reaction to that would be every single person that would show up to that kind of a thing is an idiot, right?
Okay.
That's my personal assessment, is that good, rational, smart people don't line up with knives, for one. Number two, though, this is going to sound terrible. I'll acknowledge that in advance, but 300 people in a drag out knife fight is better than 20 million people against 20 million people, right?
Sure.
So you know, if we can keep the whatever violence there is localized and limited, it's still bad. I'm not saying that's good. It's terrible, but it's
Yeah,
better. It's better. You know, I said the other
but
day
that's
that you only have a world war if you get world powers fighting each other,
fair
right?
enough. But
So
that's
I
not
don't
the question.
care. I don't care the extent to which we have bad actors and people doing bad things. I
Sure.
do care the extent to which that grows to where
That's
it's
what
all of us
that's what I'm
against all of
asking.
them. I think
So
that the media will make it worse. Um, I think honestly, people on both sides will make it worse. There are too many people that want to fight, and something I talk about in the book a lot. There are too many people who are correct in their judgment. Right. So let me pick a let me. This is going to feel like a rabbit trail, but it's not. Okay. So there are people that believe that. A fetus is a part of a woman and the woman has autonomy over her body. I believe that people have autonomy, right? I'm fairly libertarian. I think autonomy is a sacred principle, right? And so I would say that person that says, well, this is still inside me and it'll die without me, so it's part of me, so I get to decide. That's a rational position, okay? The opposite is equally true. That thing becomes a child, a living person, and so it's alive, and so you shouldn't murder living people, right? That is also true. So the problem is not that people disagree, it's that these beliefs are so firmly held that they try to use power to make the other side see it their way. Um, when really they're both, you know, they're both rational sometimes. Um, again, don't want to talk about abortion. That's not my point. My point is though
yeah, and we got to be. I got
that
to be careful.
every one of these issues, whether it's small government, big government, whether it's regulation or deregulation, you know, there are rational people on both sides of that, of
Sure.
every one of them. And so
Sure.
where we get problems is when people say, well, I'm going to take to the street with my gun and I'm going to make it be my way because I'm more right than them. Or I'm going to get in the legislature and me and my homies are going to change the law to make it my way. Right? That's just the abuse of power. That's where the real problem is. You know, it's a failure to understand that those crazy ones over there that think you're crazy also, they are also rational just like you. And so the answer is to leave them alone.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I support you. I mean, I suspect strongly that we don't agree on a lot of political things. But you live in California and I live in Texas, and you should have California's way in California.
Totally
I should
agree.
have it Texas's way in Texas. That's the whole point.
Totally agree.
Um,
But yeah. But for the sake of this series,
yeah,
totally agree. Totally agree. And I love having conservative friends, and we've come to that
yeah, for sure,
philosophical
for sure.
bridging. My question though is, take a look at this picture. So this is an actual drawing from a newspaper print that would have gone to many Southerners and many Northerners in 1859. There's literally a picture of a guy pulling away someone's child and putting the gun in his face so that he gets shot in the
Mm-hmm,
face in front of his wife and his
mm-hmm,
two kids.
mm-hmm.
That's exceptionally violent and
Absolutely
unjust and ruthless.
terrible. There's no
There's also
justification
another
for
picture of a man who's completely unarmed, and another guy walks up onto him and shoots him in the
that.
face while riding his horse. So this is what caused the Civil War, according to historians. Here's how Bleeding Kansas led to the Civil War. It deepened divisions ahead of the Civil War. They watched each other get blasted and murdered in the worst ways for 10 years, and there was no justice and nobody brought to courts or anything. And so they thought, I guess it's just cool for Southerners to kill Northerners.
Right.
And I guess it's just cool for Northerners to kill Southerners.
Let
So,
me parse that headline for you a little bit there. So,
sure.
violent clashes in Kansas and beyond over whether or not to allow slavery in the new territory. I'm not for slavery, period.
Neither am I.
This is a rhetorical argument, not an argument for slavery, but
Briefly, please.
whether or not to allow. Okay, if I want an abortion, I should have one. If you don't want an abortion, you shouldn't have one. That's what the pro-abortion activists say. If
Okay.
I want a slave, should I have one? If you don't
No.
want a slave, should you not have one? Right? I mean, there are tons of legal and moral and complex issues here. And again, with taking no position, it becomes a war when people try to use power to whether or not to allow.
Fair enough.
That's what leads to civil war. It's
Sure.
people thinking that I cannot allow this to exist.
Right.
I must kill them
Right.
because it must not exist.
Right.
That leads
So-
to civil war.
Yeah. So I
That's
cannot.
my take. Again, not making any position on any of those issues.
Sure. Sure. So when liberals say, I cannot allow a man who said that he will round up the gays, imprison all his political rivals, in the Constitution, make sure there's never another election. Is that the kind of talk that ramps people up like Bleeding Kansas did?
You should rearrange your government to not be under that guy. Period.
I'm just saying, yeah, but if he's a Hitler, that's an existential threat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. But
So what do we
could
do
be an
then?
existential threat over there. Again, I think you circle the wagons and you take care of your personal business. Even Hitler, right? I mean, if maybe again, I'm not. Nah, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. I think again, if you don't consent to being governed by that, then you withdraw. There's no reason to fight. There's no reason to say, I must take up arms to withdraw. You bring all your guys home and you put them around the edge facing out. You mind your business. This is my take on that issue.
What I find interesting, and we're winding down, was that Peter Ducey, who's a reporter, had asked Karine Jean-Pierre, spokesperson for the White House, basically, how many more times does Trump have to be shot at before you guys realize that calling him Hitler and it's the end of America, maybe encourages that kind of behavior? And the answer shocked me because it's what the Nazis did. Here you go. I'll show it to you right now.
Yeah, what'd you say to that? Because my impression is that they claim no responsibility. They say, "Oh, that's just some bad guys." They claim no responsibility for
claiming no responsibility would be bad enough. What Karine Jean-Pierre said was that you are a bad person for even asking that question, and you asking that question is, quote, dangerous.
Right.
So how Peter Ducey goes, is the rhetoric causing violence to happen to Trump? You guys think maybe we could calm it down? How dare you ask that question? And it's dangerous that you even bothered to ask that question. There it is. So liberals are backing it up. Conservatives aren't.
Right.
But I know for a fact that this is what the Nazis did. So the Nazis and Mao, and I was telling people about this, is the Nazis and the Mao Zedong. This is why I asked you about communist China. Both the Nazis and Mao Zedong and the Imperial Japanese had the exact same attitude. Certain ideas are dangerous.
Forbidden. Yes.
We can't talk about them because they're scary. You could put ideas into people's heads. And then they talk about those ideas. And then we, the government, would have to allow them to talk about those ideas. And then we'd have to have better arguments than what they had. So they do what we said. And we couldn't just go, oh, do what I say because I said so. Right. And so that's scary. And that's what the Nazis and the communist Chinese felt. So I was beside myself when I saw the official press secretary for the official White House, for the official Democratic Party, which says they're fighting
official
for
Nazi strategy.
Use literally the same thing. That is dangerous that you ask questions. That is dangerous that we have discussions. That is dangerous that we talk about certain ideas. There's the thing. There's Peter Ducey.
I disagree philosophically. I think there is no choice if there are no options, right? I cannot choose something if my choice is take it or leave it, right? I can only choose something if I have this or that, right? And so by limiting the range of acceptable discourse, they completely take away the choice. They completely take away the choice. They completely take away, like you say, the free market of ideas. So let's just say, I think that we ought to change the flag to purple, and it ought to be purple because purple's the best color. I mean, clearly, right? And I hit the road and I say, Stars and Stripes, forget that. Purple's where it's at, right? It won't take long before people figure out that that's stupid, and I won't win in the marketplace of ideas, right? You don't need to belittle me, or you don't need to belittle the color purple, or say everything purple is evil. I mean, you don't have to do all the things that the media does to squash a bad idea. I mean, that's my take on things, is that you can't decide an idea is bad if you never hear it in the first place. And so people calling winners and losers, right, in the economy is bad. Calling winners and losers in the marketplace of ideas is bad. It's just a means of control. It's just a means of control.
Is there anything you wanted to say that I didn't ask? Was there a point about the book or the philosophy concepts related to it that we didn't cover?
No, I mean, the main things about the book is that I'm committed, intensely committed to seeking a peaceful resolution to all these things. And to me, the best answer to that is more local control. Interestingly enough, that was the same answer that Buckley had. It's the same answer that Ryan McMakin had. I'm building on the work of other people here, trying to bridge the political and economic arguments over with national divorce as a slogan. But again, totally committed to peace. That's why I put peace on the front of the book, right, on purpose. So we'll just leave it at that.
We'll leave it there. I'll email you with a copy of the video soon. I want to say thank you. And as we always do, if you know anybody, activists, reporters, writers, professors, who would be interested in a fair conversation on political polarization, we're always looking for more recommendations. You don't have to, but I'll ask you in the email. Thank you for your time, and I will email you a copy shortly. And I want to say thank you again.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Marcus.
All right, talk to you soon.